Hey guys, before we begin the show, we just wanted to let you know that you can reach out to us at hustleestate1, that's the number 1 at gmail.com. If you have any questions or topics that you want us to discuss, we would love for you to let us know. We want to keep our listeners engaged, and honestly, we're here for you. So whatever you guys want to learn about, let us know. Again, that's hustleestate1 at gmail.com. So hustleestate, the number 1 at gmail.com.
Welcome to Hustle Estate from good old New Jersey. I'm Isaac Gilman, one of your hosts.
And I am Ed Hendrickson, your other host.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about the companies that we work for and a little bit about kind of what we do within those companies. So both Ed and I, and we've talked a little bit about this on previous episodes, Ed and I both work in the real estate industry. Ed's talked a lot about kind of flipping homes, hard money lending, but he does work with an organization on a regular basis, whereas I work for a large title insurance company. And so, and specifically within the technology team in title insurance. So we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences and kind of ask each other some questions around, you know, what do we do? How long have we been doing it? And some other things like that. So I guess I'll start with Ed. I know Ed works for a company called Culture Estate. We've talked about Culture Estate a few times on this podcast. But Ed, could you kind of give us a little bit of rundown of like, what is Culture Estate?
So Culture Estate is a real estate company, just like a Keller Williams or a Caldwell Banker, you know, a nationally recognized name. However, we're set up a little bit different, I guess, than other companies from the standpoint of, I guess a lot of other companies you would join and you're a little bit more individualized, I guess I could say. Whereas Culture Estate is really all about working together and creating that culture. I mean, that's why it is, I believe, you know, specifically it's named that way, because it's creating a different culture of this open concept of having, you know, weekly trainings, people getting together and feeling like you can come to the office and bounce questions off of people. An area where we're not competing against each other, we're working together. So if you find something, maybe like a new niche or some new way to get more clients, or somehow a Facebook advertising avenue that works well for you, people come to the office and they tell everybody else about it. Like, hey, look, if you're trying to get more leads to your open house, I was doing this. I had this many people come to the office. Whereas I feel like a lot of these other companies, you're more of a work from home kind of agent. I mean, yes, you have an office as a base, but I do feel like Culture Estate is more people than maybe one of those other offices coming in and out on a daily basis.
So it's like trying to break the traditional model of kind of like the real estate, the real estate
Correct.
firms, I guess, if you will,
yeah,
or like
exactly.
Specifically though, kind of like the brokers, like the you call them retail. What do you call them? You said Keller Williams.
Like a regular mainstream, I guess, is how I would. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of flip it upside down, right?
Yeah.
Traditionally, they're thinking about doing more individual work, and you're like, let's pool our resources, come together, and solve problems together.
And just as a disclaimer, I mean, I've never worked at any of these other companies before, so it's just more of what I've heard. I did work at one other large company once, but that was just more when I got my license. When you get your real estate license, the term is you have to hang it somewhere. So I just put it at an office down the street from my apartment, basically. So that way I had my license somewhere. And I will say the vibe is definitely different. You know, when I was working there, it was a little bit more, I would call it corporate from that kind of a standpoint. Whereas if you had a question to ask, you had to ask a certain person. It wasn't like I could walk into the office and there'd be like 10 agents there that'd be like, hey, I'll help you write up that contract. Whereas now, if I have any questions, I mean, I can Number one, I can speak to my broker. Typically, that's not something I feel that people can do. By the way, the broker is the person who either owns a company or runs the office. In essence, you have to be a broker to have an office. So our broker, Louis Leva, is very open and works with all of us to help drive business. He also doesn't really compete with us, I guess you can say. He doesn't really have his own listings necessarily. He helps us get more listings and really teaches us how to grow the business, and in turn then that grows the business for him, and then it's profitable for both ends.
Okay, very cool. And how long you've been working at Culture State now for, I don't know, close to 6-8 months now?
I mean, I've technically, yes, but I've been full-time there probably for 4 months at this point.
Okay. Because you started like with trainings, right? You met Louis.
So I would go, I guess I started in, maybe sometime in October, technically, and I would go on Saturdays and meet Louis. He held a Saturday training session for new agents, so anybody could come. It was an open forum. It started off with like 2 or 3 people in his office, and it grew to 10 or 15 people out on the main floor just asking questions, or he'd specifically pick a topic and we'd go over that. And
this is what you're kind of saying is like the difference. Like exactly. The model is this like training, and then it's almost like a win-win, right? Like why would I give out free training? Or right. I think it's free.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So why would I give out free training? Well, it's because then you can like help me do better or help the company succeed.
And I feel like other companies probably offer training, and I almost want to say, again, it's probably a little bit more structured, and not that that's not a bad thing, but this is just the point where you can really come and ask something that you want, and it's like, hey, well, if you're asking that question, this other new agent's probably asking that question.
Right.
So let's go over that topic.
Yep. Okay. You've been working with Culture State now for a few months, and the training seems to be different, but then like it seemed to me, and this was kind of like we talked about this offline, but you're working with people at the company that maybe in the past you wouldn't necessarily be teaming up with, right? You'd be more like focused on like, how do I succeed without others around me?
Right. Yeah. I guess I always had a mentality, just because in my mind, one day wanting to leave the corporate world was to succeed on your own. So I was always looking for avenues of me doing flips on my own, or wholesaling a property by myself. But now I've realized that I'm not in such a corporate environment. I mean, working together with other people is extremely valuable. So there are some people in the office that I am working with from a standpoint of buying properties and wholesaling them, or flipping them together. This way we're able to accomplish more with less. I mean, not that with less, but it's just a lot more easier, because if I don't have time, somebody else can go, and we can fill in and help each other out.
And that's different from your previous experience, or just you had a mentality, or you were thinking like a mindset toward like, I got to do this all myself. And then as like you've been working with Culture State, you're kind of beginning to realize, or you've realized that it's like, if I work with others in a more win-win situation, everybody kind of like, it's a win-win. Everybody wins, right? And then like somebody can like pick up where I left off, or I can pick up where they left off, and vice versa, and build that like team foundation to be successful.
Definitely. And it also comes to being around a lot of like-minded people, which I wasn't necessarily around that before.
Okay.
Because when I felt like when you're at a corporate job, right, you're doing your corporate job, and everybody has their lives outside of the job.
Sure.
I feel now more of what I'm doing, like my life outside the job is now my life, because my life outside the job was real estate. That was my passion. Now I'm doing my passion all the time. Yeah, obviously I have a life, I have a family and stuff like that I do, but I mean, I'm thinking about real estate when I'm at home, and I'm trying to flip on the weekend, but now I can do that on Tuesday as well at 12 o'clock in the afternoon with other people. And as you know, which we can touch on, in a little bit, working with the team, people have their strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
So now I'm able to partner with people that maybe there's something that I was weak at, someone on the other team is stronger at. So all of us coming together, we're building a powerful force that can get more done than we could each have done separately, even added up.
But yeah, I definitely think, and coming from where I work, so like so I work for a company called Amrock, and Amrock is, they are primarily a title insurance company, but they provide appraisal services and settlement services. So oftentimes when you're getting a mortgage, you pay for title insurance, and title insurance basically ensures that previous issues with the property history don't come back up. So, maybe when you're going to buy your property, you're generally speaking, most people don't know or don't really see this happening because you're not working with the title insurance company very often. You may get a call though, or the seller may have to clear a lien on their property, right? Like maybe they didn't pay a bill. And so somebody says, well, you can't sell this property until you pay me off, basically. And a lot of these things kind of get cleared up by the title insurance company to say, yep, your property, you have the seller has, or the buyer, I should say, has the rights or has like clear ownership of the property once the seller gives them those rights. And working I work specifically within the technology team of Amrock, and I lead software engineering teams there, and I've been doing that now for about 3 years. And teamwork is essential. Without teamwork, I don't know if we'd ever be able to solve the big problems that we look to solve on a regular basis. And a lot of this, I mean, we're seeing it all the time, but like real estate is changing with technology. And so title insurance is no different, right? Property records, property history, all that information can be better leveraged using technology.
Right. Well, it's also, a lot of it's probably becoming more digitalized, right? Because I'm sure a lot of this stuff is in some, tax assessor's office on a note card somewhere sometimes.
It definitely, especially in areas of the country that are more rural and maybe their recording jurisdiction is not a full-time thing. They don't have like a person there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They have them there twice a week.
Yeah, for 3 hours.
For 3 hours, right? Versus, living in the, metro areas that you and I have lived in, like Detroit or New York City. A lot of these, it's much easier, although it's not as easy as it probably should or could be, to get, property information or to get tax information. And yeah, so whether the county or the jurisdiction is digitizing things, whether there's other companies out there that are trying to help these counties digitize things, whether it's our company that's trying to help improve the process using technology.
So with that, is your company trying to improve, like disrupt the whole process, or more of just make what it already exists better?
Yeah, so title insurance in order to verify the information of that property, you go and gather information. And that's essentially a person could go do this, but if they make a mistake, they don't have the insurance to say, like, they don't have the underwritten insurance to say, like, oh, we'll pay you back for this mistake, right, or whatever, right? So we do the due diligence, and we have a very efficient process. We've been doing this for 20, 25 plus years. And so we know what we're doing. We have the relationships with vendors and counties across the country to know how to get this information. And then what we try to do is we say, all right, we have our own internal processes that we look to improve on a regular basis. And can we improve those processes using technology? Can we improve those processes just moving different pieces of the puzzle around? Do we need to do a process still, right? To your point about like technology and digitization, right? So e-closing, things that like electronic signatures, this is like the future, right? And it's the future in a real estate industry that's highly regulated, but it's very much the present for like other things that probably you and I do on a regular basis, right? Like I don't want to have to come to your house to sign a document. Right. I would rather you just email me the document and I can sign it electronically. But due to federal regulations and state regulations, there are roadblocks there. So, that is one thing. If all the states in the country decided, or if federally, like we all decided that e-closing, so like I don't have to physically go and sign a piece of paper, could be ready to go tomorrow, then that's something that we can take out of our process, right? We don't have to require the buyer, or the borrower, or the seller to come into the office.
Right.
So those are always ways that we look to solve our own internal problems, if you will, or our own internal pain points.
So on your team, are you guys presented with a problem? Like, hey, this is a process that we have. Can you guys either fix it or create a new process? Is that kind of where things get to you guys?
Yeah, there's two ways that we identify problems. One is somebody comes and presents us with that problem, like you're asking, maybe our CEO, maybe one of our business leaders, somebody says this needs to be solved. Maybe the government is like, hey, we are rolling out this new compliance piece and it needs to be done. An example of that would be a few years ago, the CFPB, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, required that the closing disclosure, which replaced the HUD, which is like your line item form when you have a purchase or a refi transaction, it has to be used on every transaction. It's going to replace the HUD form. So that was to go live October 3rd, 2015. I worked on that project before I became a leader, but that's like, if the government says something has to be done, and the reason that had to be done was it was laws that changed post the financial collapse in 2008. So when the government says it needs to do things, and sometimes it's the state, right? Like we work in every state in the country, and some states, require something different, right? Like Michigan and New Jersey and Texas and Florida and California, they all have their own state regulations for various both title insurance and mortgage processes. So we try to, we look towards our business leaders, and then we look towards the government to sometimes tell us kind of what problem to solve. And then the other way we look at it is, what problems do we identify? So as a leader, I try to create a vision for my team, using data, like how long does it take for us to, let's say, complete this entire process, thinking really big. And that in a few years, we want to take how long it takes to solve this process and, reduce it by 50%, let's say. And so if that's the vision based on, I talk with leaders, I talk with other team members, and some of it comes from experience. I've been there for 3+ years now, and I understand more than somebody that would be there for maybe a year or so. And so I can try to set that vision for the team, and then my team, I try to empower my team members to say, all right, based on the data that we have available to us, what could we provide, or what problem could we solve that would provide the most amount of value? So in technology, oftentimes this is thought of as like, or we think about solving problems in chunks. We don't think about eating the whole pie at one time, but oftentimes you'll hear like 80% of the value is done in 20% of the work.
Right.
And this is not something that's just technology specific, but
we are used all over.
Right. So what we're trying to do is we're really trying to solve, like, if we want to reduce, let's say, a process by 50%, but we can solve the problem in multiple ways to get there. Is there a piece of that problem that can be solved that maybe reduces it by 25 or 30% to begin with? If that's the case, we should start there.
Yeah.
Right? We shouldn't start with something that's going to solve it 5%. We should start with what's going to solve the most valuable thing out there.
Now that sounds very logical to me, but is that not typical that people would do that? Or is that what you're saying? You look at the whole picture first to try to find out where you can take the biggest pieces maybe first, because someone could sit there and say, oh, well, if we do this one thing, we can save 5%. It's not something that you should jump the gun to, because there might be something that's 25%, and that 5% actually might take a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very obvious.
Yeah.
But it might be a harder fix.
That's a great question. Oftentimes you're battling different requests. So maybe you've identified a way to solve a problem, but somebody else, for whatever reasons, believes there's a better way to do it, or believes there's a different way to do it. And then you have the things of like, well, we could solve 2% with this one change tomorrow. Right? Is that 2% change? And maybe you do that 2% change if it literally will take you less than 24 hours to do. But oftentimes, and this is just kind of a joke, is when somebody says it's just going to be a one line code change, right? All I need to do is change this one line of code. Oftentimes it's never as simple as you think. And the reason being is, when you change one line of code, while it may sound very simple, and sometimes it is, but you have to think about all the other things that are required, and by required I mean kind of it's like a due diligence part. It's all right, so if I change this one line of code on my local machine, now I need to test it in my other environments, and I need to make sure that also doesn't break anything else in different potentially systems that maybe that piece of code can impact. And if it does impact any of that stuff, now what a one line code chain has done is cause maybe hours, maybe days even worth of work, right? So that's why sometimes those small things aren't as small as we think they are. Now, if we think that we can solve 25% of that 50% reduction in kind of one solution, right? That solution we may not be able to do in a week or two. That may take a little bit of time, right? And so we may break that up into, all right, if we can solve 25% of this problem in one project, can we solve a portion of that 25% in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 4? What's the most?
Break that down.
Break that down as well. Yeah. And that's kind of where we get into like agile methodology, where you're like breaking things down into builds, and you're trying to, and new information may come in as you're working on it. It may say, hey, you know what? We can actually do more. Or, oh, maybe we need to do less. Maybe we should change gears. And that's kind of where you're really trying to think about what is always the best way to solve a problem, but you don't want to get into like analysis paralysis, where you're like always just, I'm never making decisions because I'm always just trying to think of the best way to solve something. That does happen, right? That's
I think that happens
even outside of technology. Right.
It's exactly. I mean, I personally fall fault to that at times.
Yeah.
And I think that it's good sometimes to just have somebody behind you that just push you and be like, just move on and you'll figure it out.
And that's exactly the power of teams, right? Is in technology, right? You work with what we try to work in cross-functional teams. So it's not, I don't lead just engineers. I lead business analysts, I lead engineers, I lead quality engineers, sometimes I lead project managers or project coordinators.
So your one team that you lead per se is a team of 5 different specialties or something along those lines. It's not like you said, it's not 5 coders.
Yep.
But it's 5 different people from different areas that are working together.
Yep. And sometimes, and every team is going to vary, right? Some teams, like in one of my teams, we have a data scientist on our team, and the reason being is because it's very data heavy. It's a very data heavy project. I would say some teams would even have you could have a database administrator, or maybe you'd have a build engineer on your team, or maybe you'd have maybe you specifically have a business expert, right? Somebody that has been in the industry, and actually we have a team member like this that's been in the industry for years and knows the industry really well, and not just like how things work, but they know the various vendors and various like people that work for these vendors, and they're able to just provide insights that honestly when you start out in this business, you just don't have that level of experience,
right?
And so for a lot of us within our team, we're growing that experience, and we're growing those skills, but we're just not there. So you hire the skills that you have those gaps on.
So let me ask you, this is maybe not so much to your role specifically. So for me, like I'm doing real estate, and a lot of my team members are doing real estate, and we're very similar. It's not like one's compliance, one's engineering, and one's finance, right? We're all, I mean, we do have our strengths and weaknesses within. And I could argue that I'd be better off on my own because I don't have to ask anybody to make decisions.
Yeah.
However, sometimes the benefit of working alone sometimes is outweighed by being with other people because you have those other person's strengths, right? But what I'm asking you, I guess, is you're working with people with different walks of life, and I chose to merge with these people to better ourselves. your team members didn't ask really to work with those people necessarily. It sounds like it's more of maybe you as a team leader or management saying, we need a certain project done and we need these 5 people.
Yep.
So how do you deal with that team environment of those personalities getting along? People who just might not want to really be on a team together, and they can say, you know what, I'm going to go back to doing it myself, because like the compliance guy can't just go back to like being compliance without the finance guy or the business analyst. You know what I mean?
So there's a lot in that question, and I think it's a really important question. As a leader, there is a number of ways to think about teams. At the end of the day, though, and to your point earlier, like, you want people there to help you out and to kind of give you feedback when maybe you think something is correct, but then somebody's like, well, no, I could do it differently and I could do it better, and here's how. And like we were talking about earlier, right, like challenging each other, right? Hey, like even just diversity of thought. So if somebody's like, no, I don't want to do that, generally speaking, on my teams, that doesn't happen. And the reason why it doesn't happen is because our company culture is really strong, and like when we hire people and like they go through a vetting process that, to be honest, I'm not even a part of all of that. Like, I'm a part of that hiring, and many of the team members I currently have today, actually, I never hired originally. Other leaders in the company hired them, and I trust that because all the leaders have gone through a number of trainings around, the culture, and we've all come through the culture to some degree, we all expect a certain level of openness and a certain level of accountability towards, making sure that you are a team player. Like, not expecting you to be the greatest team player in the world, but you do expect that you need to be able to work with a team. Yeah. If your like refusal to work with a team is something that we hired you for, I would question maybe the person that hired you, or I would question, like, are you sure? Maybe they said in their interview they could grow into working with a team. Okay, well, let's figure that out. And to your point of strengths and weaknesses, maybe one of their strengths is like we use Strength Finders, which is a book you can buy on Amazon. It's not some secret.
Is that like a personality test?
Yeah, kind of? It's there's I forget the company that off the top of my head that puts it out there, but it's a book. I recommend it for everybody. They have like a list of like 25 strengths. You take a little, or 30 strengths. You take a little assessment. The assessment takes about an hour. The book, I think, is like $15 or $20 on Amazon. Feel free to go out. It's called Strength Finders 2.0. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, companies use this product and this company as like a methodology towards their entire culture. We just use it as a tool, or at least I personally have used it as a tool. And it kind of comes up, at the very least, if you buy this book, it comes up, this assessment will give you your top 5 strengths.
Okay.
You can go and purchase more insights if you'd like, but your top 5 strengths basically tell you, like, for me, my number one strength is context. It's really important that I understand kind of like how we got to where we are, so that I can make decisions for the future. Another strength of mine is what they call a ranger. So I'm organized. I was even saying to your wife earlier today, I'm like, I have organized chaos. Like, I'm not neat. I'm not super clean in terms of like everything's filed in the right places, but I know I capture emails. I take notes like it's no tomorrow. Like, I am a very organized person. And then all of my team members, I look over all their strengths, and I do try to say, all right, what are some gaps, right? It's not a perfect world as a leader where I am. I can't fill all those gaps, but, or I can't fill them all immediately, but I do try. And if I do have missing, like, let's say I have a strong skill that I'm missing, like maybe it's an engineering skill, maybe it's an analysis skill, I will then I'll go to my director, or I'll think of ways to help somebody grow those skills, to either hire somebody to fill that gap, or to help grow somebody into that skill and to fill that gap. And I think no different, right? Like, you and I were talking about how in the past you kind of, even at your last company, right, you didn't work alone. You were bouncing ideas off of, as a loan officer, you were saying like, hey, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? And even going back to your networking, right? Like, you formed groups around you, and I think you found them pretty valuable. Like, when you first became a loan officer, you didn't know what to do. So like, what was your line of thinking in terms of like figuring that stuff out?
Well, I just leveraged the people in the office who have been doing it. So I spent time with number one, the partners of the firm, and who happen to be the underwriters. I don't know if you could split them into two different people and decide who I would have gone to if they happen to not be. But basically, it was good that they were the same person. Because number one, you got the philosophy of the company as to where they believed so they had the vision here. So now you saw what their vision was, and they were teaching you how they were underwriting a loan, so you knew what to look for when you were getting a loan. So that was kind of the same. They're different, but the same in some sense, right? Because the underwriting has to do.
Well, it has to like go in line.
Yeah,
it has
exactly.
to be hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's good that it kind of came from the same person, because maybe an underwriter could have a different vision for a company than the owner does, even though they are kind of going hand in hand, but they might then conflict a little bit more. Now, I would also go to the other loan officers who specifically knew the products well. I would learn them. And then we worked with the processing department, because just understanding the documents and forms that were going to need to be collected, because as a loan officer, you really are the face of the company at times. So they, if there's a problem, they call me. They don't call processing all the time.
Right.
Some people do. Some people know that they can do that. But a lot of people who you've built a good relationship with, and they're maybe only getting a loan because of you, because you guys had a good rapport, are calling me to ask me about the process. So I got to go to them and learn how their process works at the same time. And again, now everybody's starting to talk together and realize, and then you can say, hey, processing, why don't we work on this? It seems like if we fix this, or you can go to the partners and say, what about this in the underwriting? Have you thought about changing that as you start to grow and get the picture?
And so then you, like, when you moved to Culture Estate, right? And you started kind of it wasn't just the classes, right? But then you started teaming up with people in your office to like do deals, right? And so how have some of those, how's that like interaction been in terms of like, oh, can I bounce this idea off you? Does this make sense? Like, do you find value in working with others?
I definitely do. I mean, the way it started at Culture Estate, I mean, you know me well. Like, I definitely talk about what I'm doing. So I came to the office and it was like, oh, what do you work? I'm flipping and I do hard money. It was like, oh, what's hard money? So I kind of became the person in the office that knows everything about hard money. Now there's people in the office that know a lot about, we do a lot of cold calling. There are some people in the office that are really good at that. And people go to them, hey, I'm having trouble with this. So I just kind of became a person who was good at something. And then you start talking to maybe somebody's doing a lot of deals, and that's kind of what happened, is that I wanted to do more deals, and I started to talk to a person in the office who was doing a bunch of deals. And then it was, well, I want to also, I had a big interest in going into sheriff's sale. So it was like, let's work together. Like, you're getting deals. Like, I want to go to the sheriff's sale. Let's piece this together. Like, I have some experience. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it kind of merged into that. Like, somebody who was doing something, somebody who had interest, and just, kind of making one out of two, really.
Did you think, since you started there, or since you've been like doing that, right? It sounds to me kind of like, if I think about the cross-functional teams that I lead, like, you have this specialty, right? Like, let's say you're one of the special you engineer work. Somebody else does like the analysis of the work. Somebody else does the database stuff of the work.
And that's
right?
exactly
who
we are.
But you just don't have those titles.
Right. That's exactly where there's three of us. There's somebody who is good at the research and stays in the office and does the research. And then there's two people that go out on the road and drive while that person's doing the research. And then one of the two drivers will eventually go and bid, and the other ones go, and the other one will potentially stay on the road in case if something new comes up.
To like maintain like flexibility.
Right. Because like we have an idea of what's going to sell at an auction, but sometimes when you go to the auction, they give you the list of what's actually selling. It's like, wait, that property wasn't on the list. So I have my computer and I'll instant message them and say, hey, this property came up. Our researcher will say, this looks good. Hey, guy on the road, can you go drive this? All while I'm sitting there waiting to find out, is this property biddable? Should we bid on it?
Got it.
So that's how the three of us have come together. And I think that teams, I just want to make a comment to this, because teams, I think, can be good and bad.
Yeah.
Because teams can push you. So if you're uncomfortable and not sure how a process works, even if the other guy who doesn't know how the process works either, you all of a sudden get this sense of comfort because you're not alone. People don't like to do things alone that they don't know, I believe. So two people will, though, do something alone that they don't know.
Yeah.
But eventually you learn, and then you don't want that other person. Because now all of a sudden you know it. You don't need that comfort from that other person. So that can become a problem also with teams. So what do you think about that from your experience?
So I think there are things. So I think that overall that is true, at least from a human, like, natural standpoint. I do believe that there are times where you don't need a team to solve a problem, right? There are probably problems out there that are just don't require, like the term having too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you just don't need it, and that's okay. I think that is all right. I do think, though, that there is an infinite amount of problems out there, and I do believe that once you hit a level of, all right, I may not need help with this anymore. What's the next thing that you're trying to achieve, right? And this is what I work with team members all the time on is we try to set a vision. We try to set a vision for each individual, right? Like, where if you want to become, let's say you're a software developer and you want to become a senior software engineer, what does it take to get to that level? And it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not even going to happen over a few years. But there's both hard and soft skills that you have to learn. And so maybe you've mastered some of the hard skills. Maybe you're an excellent engineer, and you get promoted to software engineer, and you continually write the best code in the world. You have zero bugs. You write with quality in mind all the time. But you don't want to mentor others. Let's say you don't want to help other people get to the level that you're at.
Yep.
So maybe you don't want help on your engineering skills, but you're going to need assistance building your mentoring skills. It's required, for us at least in our company, we require that as a senior in any position, you are able to mentor, and you're mentoring often. Because that's really the big difference in our opinion, other than like technical experience, that differentiates between a software engineer and a senior, or really most mid-level positions and the senior level position. And so we may not assign a mentor to you to help you with your engineering skills, but we may want to assign a mentor to you to help with your mentoring skills, right? And so that's kind of like where, from your standpoint, is, if you know how to like get a great deal going, like, why should I attach somebody to help you get that deal going? Now, I may attach someone for you to help others get that deal going, right? Like, I may say, all right, if you know it so well, now get 2 other people to get great deals like you get for yourself. So right. I may challenge you in that way.
So you kind of, if these 2 people who don't know anything came together and they started to figure it out, now you don't really need the other person, but maybe you two can push yourselves up to the next level to learn, all at the same time teaching somebody else now how to find those deals. Because there'll be other problems within even this environment,
right,
that'll always, as it's kind of like the, more money, more problems, right? Like more success, there's more problems, just different ones at different levels. So you kind of bring people in below you to start to fill the things that you're good at.
Yeah, and actually, and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's a big, there's one of the public victories is win-win, right? And the concept is that oftentimes we think about like win-lose, like in sports, for instance, right? Like somebody wins the game, somebody loses the game, right? But in
black and white.
Very black and white, right? And then there's other mentalities too, right? Lose-win. Like, I give something up for you to win, so I sacrifice something. And the concept in the book is really that those types, and there's some few other, right? You could lose, you could just win. It's kind of like prisoner's dilemma almost, but the basic premise is that the only thing that really you should try to achieve is win-win. Otherwise, you don't do the deal. And I don't mean this as in a business deal. I mean this as in just like something that you can achieve with almost everything you do, right? If you and I, let's say, are sitting here, or let's say you and I are doing a deal together, we should always try to win-win. Otherwise, we should just not do the deal. you shouldn't compromise on something to let me win on the deal, and I shouldn't compromise on something to let you. And the reason being is because once I compromise on something, maybe that causes some subconscious resentment. And later on, I try to...
And that starts to be a problem with that
exactly. And that's a relationship that, you know what, but it's okay to walk away from something. It's okay to say, you know what, this isn't going to work out. And same with the teams that I lead. There are times where I will, present a problem, and at the end of the day, we're like, hey, we can't... This isn't going to be...
This team can't solve that
This team can't solve this problem. Or, you know what, I don't think we should solve the problem. Maybe the team brings up a problem that I don't think we should solve.
Right.
And you know what, if neither of us can get to that win-win situation, we go to something else. We move on. And I would say the same to kind of your question or your thought kind of like helped me like raise that idea of something that I've read recently where it's like, yeah, it's okay to go your separate ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think it's a good thing to be open-minded to.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to comment on while you were saying though, and I want to know what your thoughts are about this engineer becoming a senior engineer.
Yeah.
I think it's okay personally to just be a great coder and never be a good mentor.
Yeah.
Now that's not really what you're trying to imply or anything in a negative way, but if you want to be a senior engineer, you have to recognize that you have to change, but it's okay not to be a senior engineer. I just think that there are a lot of people out there that feel the pressure to maybe move up or move forward, and you don't have to. Like if you're a great coder, just code. Like you can still be a very successful coder. Like you don't need to move up or own your own company or anything like that.
I think that is totally okay. I think the only caveat to all of that is that is, as a company that is, or as a technology team, that's how we look at the senior position. Right. So, if somebody goes down the street to another company, they may look at senior position as just pure experience or whatever.
Correct.
So if they, and we try to really focus on our team members as, don't focus on the title, focus on the skills to get the title, right? Like, if people want to focus on, if title matters to them, then maybe our company, to be honest, is not the best fit for them, right? Like, that's something that we're okay, like that win-win, right? Like, if we can't get to that win-win position, we could walk away. But I will say this, I, as a leader, have no problem with somebody saying to me, I just want to code, I'll work with the team as best possible, I do not want a mentor. I'm totally comfortable with that, as long as they understand that they won't achieve that senior level. Now, they may say, that's fine with me. I could still say, though, to them that they could still perform really well, though, and they could get, salary increases or bonuses, if applicable, like, depending on...
That's great that you say that, though, but unfortunately, and I'm really happy that you and your company do that, but I really do feel like there are companies that don't do that, and it's unfortunate. Like, you become this great coder in this example that we're using here, and eventually your boss comes up to you one day and is like, hey, I know you're a great coder, but I really need you to start doing, this other stuff. Like, because all of a sudden you become the best coder on the team, and I feel that people look to the best guy on the team to become the next manager of the team, right? There's this like faulty way of promoting. Like, just because you're the best coder doesn't mean you become the leader of the coders. You can be not the best coder on the team and be the leader of the coders, maybe because you're a good coder but a great leader. So I think that, and maybe we're going off topic by this, but I think that that's a very important thing. And then the other comment I wanted to make, we can circle back on either, is that I think it's a great way to look at life, is that if you chase the skills, the end result comes, instead of chasing the end result first, right? Like, build your skills, like become, work on the skills that it takes to get that title, not the title first. Because eventually if you build those skills, you get the title.
So yeah, we have a saying at work that numbers and money follow, they do not lead.
Right.
And exactly. The idea there is, if you want to be a billionaire, what do you need to do to become that billionaire? You shouldn't let the money lead you, right? We also have another saying that's like, a penny saved is a penny. And this is part of the Quicken Loans culture and the family of companies culture. So this is, these have been published in articles and things, so I feel comfortable saying them. But the idea there is that a penny saved is a penny is like, if I'm going to spend money on a training, if I was hesitant on spending, let's say, $100 on an engineering training, right? Let's say I wanted to self-teach myself and I wanted to take like lynda.com, a course on software engineering. That $100 may eventually, if I say no to that $100 and just save that $100 in my pocket, fine. Okay, I saved $100 today. But if I take that course, I spend that $100, and then I get a new software engineering job that doubles my salary, that $100 was well worth it.
Right, exactly.
So don't just try to save a penny because it's a penny, right?
That's a big thing that a lot of people in my industry need to hear. Because go to these seminars, go to the trainings, learn, pay for them. Don't say the same thing like, oh, it's $100, I can save the $100. But you can learn so much at these events that it gives you those skills, and eventually that $100 maybe turns into $100,000 because you learned some, that skill made you close a large deal or something.
And I just had a thought about this the other day, and I know we've talked a little bit about networking in the past. Is there was an event that was sent to me with a company in Detroit that I used to do work for, and they have an annual event, and I forget how much their tickets cost. I think it's like maybe $200 a person. And I deleted the email, and I thought to myself not too long after that, I was like, should I attend? Maybe the $200 is worth the networking opportunity, right? And to your point about networking in the past, like maybe that $200 gets me a new job one day, or maybe that $200 gets me a partnership, or maybe I find talent at that company, right? And I can bring that team member into my team or into our company, and they solve a problem based on their skills that helps the company save millions of dollars, right? That $200 for a ticket was well worth it.
Yeah.
I think to your other point about kind of like not needing to be promoted, but the pressure. I'm trying to look right now for a book I recently read, but the idea is you have your rock stars and you have superstars, and the general concept, I really forget what book it is, but the general idea was that you need your rock stars, your people that are like the bedrocks of your company, right? Not rock stars as in like, they're always like, it's more like a foundational piece of your company or your team. Then you need your superstars, the ones that are always looking to improve and always looking to get to that next level. Because the combination between the two of them provides one, stability, but also that other component is like pushing for the next thing. And so between that, like those two things happening at the same time, you have this team that's going to be well-rounded, right? You're always going to be able to count on certain people for knowing certain things, and you're always going to be on other people for knowing the next thing.
Right.
And between those two things, you'll be able to more effectively solve problems. And if I can remember the book later on, I'll shout it out. But I think we and I don't mean this as my company that I work for, I think as society, right? Like I know I was trained to always think about like, how can you get that promotion? How can you get to the next level? Instead, I think it's okay at least as me as a leader, I think it's okay to say to my team members, like, you don't necessarily need to be promoted. Just do great things at your current position. The other thing is, right, things happen in life, right? You just had a kid. Mm-hmm. If you had another kid, like, do you think you'd be able to continue to be at the level that you're currently and trajectory, right, that you're going at? Maybe not, right? Having another kid would be difficult. Not to say it's impossible, but
it's also being open to things. Like this current trajectory of going in toward the direction that I am could change, and I could maybe be doing something else that's even better because I don't have the time to do this. I have to take care of my second child. It allows me more freedom or I find some other passion maybe along the way, and I have even a different trajectory, a better trajectory. Not better trajectory toward dollars, a better trajectory maybe toward happiness.
Right. Yeah, and some people want to be like, you know what, you said to your point, you said your life has become real estate, right? Like it's not, there's the work-life balance as we talk about is not really a thing for you because it's more like my life and my work is real estate. Obviously you have your family, but they 100% support you. Whereas, other people this may not be the thing that they want to do, right? Maybe software engineering is just a way to pay the bills. Right. And what they really love to do is they like to go fishing. They just know that they didn't want to become a professional fisherwoman.
Right.
I think that's okay too, right? Like, as long as you meet your expectations, you consistently are meeting the results that are expected of you. To me, as a leader, that's important, because as I just mentioned, like, not everybody is going to be that superstar, that person that's always looking to get promoted, but you don't always need that. That's not always required. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. This has been a really good content, I think. I think we covered a lot. I think people are going to learn a lot from this. I mean, I'm a big believer in people chasing their dreams, and even if you're, working in an area where, like you said, I mean, maybe you're coding during the day or an engineer, but you like fishing on the weekends, like, I think it's possible to make an income, doing something that involves fishing. So, keep that in mind and try to do that.
That's true.
There's a whole lot of,
social media you could use.
Exactly. So I was just going to say, that's what Gary Vaynerchuk believes, right? He says, stay up from 8 to 2 a.m. in the morning and, work on your fishing business and then go to work the next day. I'm not necessarily encouraging that, but there's definitely money to be made going after your passion, and sometimes it doesn't need to be as much money as you may be making in your engineering job. If, let's just say that's a successful job for you, because you can be, maybe happiness will outweigh monetary things. And I personally believe that if you're really happy, the monetary stuff can actually come as well in larger amounts, I guess is what I'm saying, if you're happier than if you're not. You might cap yourself out if you're not happy.
That was a pretty good discussion, and you could take, if you want to take Gary Vaynerchuk's or Ed's advice of staying up till from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., feel free to do so. We don't recommend it.
I definitely
you do need some sleep.
I definitely don't do that myself.
No. But I think...
Hard 10 o'clock.
Hard 9:30. Yeah, we did want to kind of just wrap things up here. I did remember the book, so it's... if anybody's...
It's actually perfect. You can plug this. We can do this.
So we talked about rock stars and superstars there till the end real quick, which is like the idea that you don't always need to have everybody on your team trying to get promoted. But the book comes from, or the book is called Radical Candor. I strongly recommend it. It's an excellent book, even if you're not in a leadership position per se, but I always challenge that idea. Everybody leads themselves. So I think if you're really having trouble with tough conversations and holding people accountable, or even holding yourself accountable, I strongly recommend the book Radical Candor. It's by Kim Scott. She's a former exec at like Google, all the major tech companies out there, Google, Apple, all those things. So check that out. Talks about superstars and rock stars. Gary Vaynerchuk I know is plugged. You got anything else, Ed?
Well, just with the Gary Vaynerchuk plug, his book, I'm currently reading it, called Crushing It. Whether you believe what Gary Vaynerchuk says or not, with if anybody's heard of him or not, but this guy is definitely a marketing social media whiz. I mean, this is what this guy spends his, he's a guru with this.
He's all over the place.
Yeah. So read this book. I mean, it does teach you a lot about social media and the different avenues and how to self-brand. So if you're interested in doing that and growing your exposure, or maybe chasing down that weekend fishing business, it's a good book with a lot of information. I would check it out. So cool. Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk.
All right, and then last thing, speaking of social media, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram. Our tag is just Hustle Estate, and then you can also shoot us an email at hustleestate1@gmail.com. Again, that's hustleestate, the number 1 @gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us on any of those platforms, questions, comments, ways we can get better. We're always looking to improve. So I think that's it. And then Ed's website.
Yeah, check me out, edhendrickson.com. It goes over my services and stuff that I do, but it also has a link for our podcast as well, and you can check out our social media from there.
Cool. All right, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.